It's time!
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Locker Room, live from Chicago. Live from my hometown, Chicago. I'm at a volleyball tournament. I'm here for the next 3 days for the President's Day Challenge. Okay? Yes, in case you're asking, I am doing this episode with a mask on, and I'm showing my Vax card to the other person in my hotel room, just so everybody understands, and I'm following Chicago's guidelines. I don't know if, SWAT teams break down. I don't really know how this works, but I feel like I just needed to specify that because this episode is coming from Chicago, coming from Chi-Town, baby. Home of the Bears, home of the carousel of QBs. I hate the Blackhawks, go Preds. Home of the Chicago Cubs, world champion Chicago Cubs, by the way. I can say that. It happened in 2016. It's still relevant. And I'm happy to be here. So my co-host couldn't be with me because I'm not around. Volleyball takes me places every single weekend. So unless I'm home at a reasonable time, like this past weekend I didn't get home till Tuesday. I had to fly right back out on Friday. So it's been a crazy, crazy week. And he will be back with us next week. So Justin, we miss you. But enough tears being shed, let's get into the episode. All right, I want to start at the Pepsi halftime show. For the simple fact that it was probably a dream come true of mine, the fact that I saw Eminem perform, you just don't see Eminem perform. For those of you who don't know, Eminem is my all-time favorite rapper. He is the greatest rapper of all time. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee when I drop that truth bomb right there. That's right, he is the greatest rapper of all time. But that whole era of rappers, Tupac, Eminem, Biggie Smalls, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, like NWA, that is my era of rap music. So it was every 35-year-old white girl and every 30-year-old man, this was our halftime show. This is what we have been waiting for. The only thing that would have made this halftime show, just finish it off, is Usher coming out and all you hear is yeah, yeah. I mean, that's right. That is about that's about that all that could have happened that have made it even more over the top. We can all agree that The Weeknd was probably the worst halftime show that I've ever seen in my entire life. It was creepy. It was weird. It had the plastic faces. He got weird fake plastic surgery leading up to it. The Weeknd was terrible. Katy Perry was the most memorable probably in the last several years. I mean, you have the dancing sharks, and she came out on a 70-foot elephant or tiger or lion, whatever it was. We've been missing shows at halftime. Even when Justin Timberlake performed, even though I love Justin Timberlake, to me it was just generic. It was just okay. And then we got the granddaddy of them all. They're like, hey, we're going to get the big hitters from this era. Give me Snoop Dogg. Give me Dr. Dre. Give me Eminem. With surprises from 50 Cent. By the way, can we stop fat shaming 50 Cent, guys? I mean, if we're supposed to, I'm going to drop some truth bombs here, all right? If we're supposed to praise Lizzo for her accepting her body, then why don't we praise 50 Cent for him accepting his body? Just saying, let's keep it equal here, okay? But no, you got 50 Cent, popping it out, bringing it into club. Kendrick Lamar, who, while I don't believe he belonged in this show, is still awesome. I love Kendrick Lamar. He's such a good wordsmith. And then it finished with who it had to finish with, which was Eminem, then Dr. Dre. I think it was poetic that Dr. Dre finished it all off because Dr. Dre, produced and found so many of these big artists. And, by the way, Dr. Dre looks amazing for his age, right? He just looks incredible. It's like that phrase. You know the phrase. And I know you're sitting there is he really going to say this into a microphone? I am. So let's get ready to cancel the Locker Room podcast here. That famous phrase that's always been said, you grow up learning it. bald people look great when they get old. And he does. He did a great job. Like, I thought Dr. Dre looked awesome, and he did so good. The set was really cool. I thought the all-white houses. Now, it would have been a lot cooler if the set was dark. And, like, the everything felt like it was way too bright to have that all-white set with the cityscape on the floor. I mean, those are just some small complaints. But this is what my halftime shows are made out of. Dr. Dre came out. He's on the producer table. Yes, I'm done with this. Snoop Dogg. Like, awesome. Who doesn't love Uncle Snoop? Also, I want, if anybody can find it for me and would buy it for me, I will wear Snoop Dogg's jumpsuit on my next podcast. And, video evidence of it. The entire show. So if anybody wants to buy me Snoop Dogg's jumpsuit, I will wear it. I will wear it out in public. I'll wear it to coaching at my next tournament. I don't really care. But I mean, who doesn't love Uncle Snoop? Just grooving and moving. Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, Kendrick, so cool. There's one person I'm leaving out for a very good reason. Mary J. And I love Mary J. Blige. Love her. In fact, she just did a fire song with Eminem and Dr. Dre and Fat Joe not too long ago. I mean, guys, listen. This is my era of music. I know some of you are Googling who's Fat Joe right now. And for that, I shame you. But I thought Mary J. was pretty terrible. I mean, I thought she looked like a train wreck. She sounded like a train wreck. Her weird motion of, like, banging the side of her head looked psychotic. And then it was poetic that at the very end of her performance, she just lays down because we all wish we were dead too. Right? Mary J. was the worst part of that show. And it has nothing to do with her being the only female in the show, because we could have gotten something a lot more fire than what we got from Mary J. And I love Mary J. The fact that she came out there and laid a giant goose egg and looked like a goose egg all at the same time, I was not a big fan. But it was poetic that it ended with Eminem and Dr. Dre. That's all I'll say. Eminem coming out. You better lose yourself in the music the moment you want it. You better never let it go. I mean, come on. Come on. And every old person was so pissed about this halftime show. So pissed. I can guarantee you any old white person over the age of 50 was furious. I can guarantee you. You want to know why? Because I was in a room with like 5 of them, and they were not having a lot of fun. But for me, one of the best halftime shows I've seen in a very long time. Now let's get into a little bit of the Super Bowl recap. It wasn't the blowout that I expected. It looked like it, and I think it would have been had OBJ been healthy the entire game. And here's why I say this. Sean McVay's system is set up for intermediate route runners. Look at Robert Woods and his success rate with Sean McVay. Robert Woods is always undercutting a route. Robert Woods is always rounding an end. Robert Woods is always sitting in a flat somewhere, and that's the place that OBJ took over after Robert Woods got hurt. And the problem with that is the way the Cincinnati's defense is set up, they were not going to take that away all night. Because the second they try and take that away, it's the second run lanes were going to open. Cincinnati basically said, we're going to stack it up, you're not going to be running on us, and we're going to pray that Matthew Stafford can throw it over the top to Cooper Kupp, which eventually that opened up in the second half, but that wasn't there in the first half. And I think Odell Beckham Jr. would have had 2-3 touchdowns, and I don't say that as like I'm joking or exaggerating. I think he could have had 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game had he stayed healthy. Because if you look at that drive when OBJ was healthy, when you look at the drive where he scored the touchdown, OBJ was going to be open all night long. Because he's still a very dynamic wide receiver, and a lot of people, this was the big question coming out of Cleveland, was, is he actually still a dynamic wide receiver? He was just maybe with crappy Baker Mayfield and the crappy Browns, or has he really lost a step and we're just not seeing it because we're seeing through the Browns lenses. You know what I mean? Like, we were blurred lines here. We didn't really know what did OBJ really have. And then when he came to Los Angeles midway through the year and he's scoring a touchdown every game, it's like, yeah, that's awesome. And you can tell that they were going to have some success rate. But I didn't know if OBJ could still be that explosive in the open field. I didn't know if OBJ could take over the Robert Woods mantle and do it justice. And I thought he was going to have a massive game had he had stayed healthy this entire match, because he showed very early on and in that early touchdown drive when he scored that he can be their new Robert Woods until Robert Woods comes back. Now, I know OBJ's a free agent, so I'll be interested to see if they try and pair him back up because they do have Robert Woods returning, who's a very, very talented, very underrated football player. But that was the difference for me and why this wasn't a blowout and why it remained pretty close. But you got to give props to the Cincinnati Bengals. Joey B, He's the real deal, folks. There's not a whole lot more that Joey can do. There wasn't a whole lot more that Burrow had to do. I mean, hell, guys. He's going against the best defense in the NFL. He's going against Aaron Donald, arguably a top 3 defensive player of all time. Some people have him as the greatest defensive player of all time. He could have won Super Bowl MVP. I think that's how impactful he was come Super Bowl night. Had the game-ending play, and he literally yanked an entire grown-ass man backwards. Like he was playing tug-of-war with a grown man to keep him from getting a first down. And then, of course, at the end, pushes 3 linemen out of the way, sacks Joey B. Joey B has to throw it up and just pray that it doesn't get intercepted or that, his wide receiver can catch it. Like, there's not a whole lot more that Joey Burrow can do. I thought he played a overall pretty decent game. Cincinnati was playing with house money, if we're being honest. Like, Cincinnati, they earned their spot to be there because they beat those teams, but they were running out of a little bit of pixie dust towards the end. And you can tell they're just missing a few pieces. I think a left tackle, I think a right guard, I think a center, I think a left guard, I think a right tackle. I mean, they were missing an offensive line. I do sincerely believe that was the biggest difference in this ball game, because I said prior to the Super Bowl, if they could keep Joey B up the entire game, he is going to do some damage. And he did show that, even fighting through all that adversity, that Joey B is a very, very dangerous man. And I think arguably could be a top 3 quarterback next year. And I'm being 100% serious about that. I think he could be right up there in Patrick Mahomes' category, if not overtake Patrick Mahomes by the way he played this year. If we're just going based on this year, Joey B was a top 3 quarterback, and I think he could maintain that level. Goodness, if I stop stuttering for 2 seconds. But overall, I mean, I wasn't disappointed. The Super Bowl was a lot of fun. 23-20 finish. Like, it was a blast. And if Joey B had a little bit more time and that offensive line could have given it to him, he had Jamari Chase streaking down the sidelines. Bengals win on a walk-off touchdown. Now we're talking about the legend Joey Burrow, is going down as one of the greatest seasons of anybody in history the way he played this year. But it was a lot of fun. NFL, we are going to miss you. Let's talk a tad more about the NFL, because I have a couple of season moves for next year that I think will make certain teams Super Bowl contenders. All right, Deshaun Watson to the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm gonna sip my coffee while you sink that in. This episode is brought to you by... No, I'm not doing that again. But Deshaun Watson to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Bucks have everything that they possibly need. You had a dynamic quarterback in Deshaun Watson. I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could be right back in Super Bowl contention. Now, Deshaun Watson might have to play for the Mean Machines for a couple of years. And for those of you who don't know that reference, just Google the Mean Machines, and you'll get that reference, and it's actually a really funny joke. So, but he might have to play for the Mean Machines for a couple seasons. But if Deshaun Watson can come back there or Miami, either one of those teams, if Deshaun Watson gets plugged into, I do believe that Tampa Bay or Miami would be instant Super Bowl contenders. Here's another fun one. Tom Brady to the Indianapolis Colts. Titans fans, we don't want to hear it. Titans fans, we don't want to hear it, but I'm hearing word on the street is that Uncle Tom ain't done. Wait, I think Uncle Tom's a bad thing, isn't it? That Tom Brady ain't done. I won't say Uncle Tom anymore. It just sounds bad. But that Tom Brady's not done. Tom Brady comes back to Indianapolis. They have all the pieces that he could possibly need to be successful. They have a defense. They've got offensive pieces. If T.Y. Hilton comes back and doesn't retire, they've got Micah Pittman. They've got players. They've got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. They've got Nyheim Hines, I think Nyheim Hines would be an incredible weapon because that is a very Tom Brady-like weapon. Tom Brady to Indianapolis, not only do they get to the Super Bowl, they win the Super Bowl hands down. And I've got 2 more here for you, and then we'll get off the NFL for a little bit. I know some of you are like, yes, football season's over. Some of you are crying in the inside like I am, and now we're just waiting for college football season to start. Go Ducks. Georgia, game day 1. Here we go. But give me Aaron Rodgers to the Denver Broncos. It just makes 100% sense. Denver's still got a decent defense. They've got Noah Fant. They've got Jerry Jeudy. They've got weapons. They've got Cortland Sutton. They've got weapons on the offensive side of the football. I believe that they have more weapons than Green Bay did. You know, Green Bay had the best weapon overall in Davante Adams. But I do believe that Aaron Rodgers being plugged into a Denver Broncos offense breeds success, breeds Super Bowl. And then last but not least, and this one might interest a lot of you because I know I have a ton of listeners in Nashville, Davante Adams to the Tennessee Titans. No, I'm not going to get rid of Ryan Tannehill. Yes, Ryan Tannehill cost me a playoff game by throwing 3 interceptions, but at the end of the day, Julio Jones wasn't what the Tennessee Titans thought they were going to get. Everybody understands now that Julio has officially lost a step. He is not the same Julio. A lot of us were praying and hoping and pleading, please Julio, come back to the same form that you were in Atlanta. Tennessee Titans fans, we did not get that, although I didn't think Julio played terrible. Done. Julio's out of there. They pursue Davante Adams. The Tennessee Titans are, mark my words, Super Bowl champions. I just don't see how you stop that offense. And, you know, it was tough trying to stop that offense with A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry alone. Now you add Davante Adams, probably, in my personal opinion, second best wide receiver, just for the simple fact that Cooper Kupp had such an amazing year that I'm not going to disown and not acknowledge what he did. He played like the best wide receiver, therefore, in my mind, he is the best wide receiver. Davante Adams, but if you put him up against any other day, I'd say Davante Adams is the best wide receiver. So I'm putting Davante at 2 right now. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, Davante goes to the Tennessee. Now you have Julio Jones, not Julio Jones. You have A.J. Brown, a top 10 wide receiver in my book, top 15 in a lot of people's. You have Davante Adams, either 1 or 2 in a lot of people's books. You have Derrick Henry, either 1 or 2 in a lot of people won't, now that Alvin Kamara is playing right alongside Deshaun Watson for the Mean Machines this coming season. The best running back in the entire NFL, Mr. 2000 is what I'm going to call him. That offense is unstoppable. I believe that Ryan Tannehill will have a lot more opportunities to throw the ball into open windows because they're going to go get some help on the offensive line this coming draft. Their defense looked amazing towards the end. There's a lot of free agent pieces out there that the Tennessee Titans could sign. We keep Tanny. Davante Adams comes to Nashville, wins us the Super Bowl. But there it is. That's done. We're done with the NFL for a little bit. We're done. But we are going to stay on football here because we got to talk about college football. More importantly, that college football is not upping their playoffs. I don't know what it's going to take for the NCAA college football, words I will not call them, committee. Let's be respectful here, Jacob. You might have one of these people on. To just up the playoffs. Why are we keeping it the same 4-team format for the foreseeable contract? Why? Why? I have begged and begged and begged and begged for the playoffs to finally be expanded and give opportunities to teams that deserve opportunities, to give us more exciting matchups. Who doesn't want to see a Cincinnati, Alabama? Who doesn't want to see a Cincinnati, Georgia? Who doesn't want to see a Michigan, Georgia, a Michigan, Alabama? Who doesn't want to see a Clemson versus Ohio State? Who doesn't want to see an Oregon win it all? I mean, right? Like, let's be honest, guys. Why are we not upping the playoffs? Why are we not expanding the playoffs? We have been begging for this. And just as much as we have been begging for the college football game to come back, and it finally is in like 5 years, we have been begging for the college football playoffs to expand. And I've told you, it needs to go to an 8-team playoff. 8-team playoff would be the perfect scenario to give teams opportunities to make it. Because right now, 4 is an intangible goal for a lot of these teams, no matter how high of a success rate they have in their season. Unless you're one of the big dogs in the big conferences, it's going to be very, very difficult to get into a playoff spot. I mean, look at the fighting and clawing that it took Cincinnati. I mean, do we not believe that Cincinnati probably should have been, given that opportunity last year? And this year it's like, all right, I guess we'll let you in. And I know SEC fans are like, no, we just need to cram more SEC teams in there, blah, blah, blah. Guess what, guys? This would give you that opportunity. You expand to an 8-team playoff. Guess who's now in the college football playoffs? Texas A&M. The only team to beat Alabama, besides Georgia. Bama fans. But, let's be honest. Who wouldn't want to see a Texas A&M rematch against Alabama in the college football playoffs? Who wouldn't want to see a Utah versus Ohio State in the playoffs. Now, we got to see that in the Rose Bowl, but what about playoff implications? Who wouldn't want to see an Oklahoma versus Georgia? Who wouldn't want to see Notre Dame versus Clemson? The point being is that there is a ton of potentially fun matchups and a big way to expand the college football not necessarily fan base because it's got one of the largest fan bases, but I would say appeal across the country for the simple fact that you're going to be giving opportunities and matchups that we have never seen. Now, of course, these teams still have to go out there and perform. I don't want you to put in a 3-9 team just because they're like, we expanded the playoffs, right? But these are fun matchups that you would never see otherwise. You want to know why? Because the SEC, Alabama schedules 7 high school teams a year with their one matchup against Georgia, their one matchup against Tennessee, and their one matchup against Vanderbilt. Like, these teams are, and honestly, this is not just because it's Oregon, but look at what Oregon's been doing in terms of scheduling. We played Ohio State this year. We won. I got an Oregon Ducks tattoo because we won. We play Georgia this coming season. We played Auburn the year before. What the Ducks are doing, and I think Dan Lanning is going to do an incredible job for them, is they're saying, hey, we know that there's bigger game opportunities, and if we want to play with the big dogs, we got to play the big dogs. And so it's amazing and it's so much fun to see a West Coast versus an East Coast, an SEC versus a Pac-12. People want to see the different conference matchups. I'm tired of seeing Alabama versus the same 7 teams every year and then they beat up on a team like Duke or Wake Forest just for the hell of it. Expanding the playoffs gives us that opportunity, gives us that possibility of these fun and incredible matchups. And guess what? College football is one and done, much like March Madness, one and done. So anything can happen. Now, it's more likely in football that there's less giant upsets than there are in college basketball, but at the same time, what if Alabama throws 1 or 2 more interceptions? That Cincinnati game becomes interesting. What if Michigan, plays like they did the entire year? Now, granted, Georgia was the best team. They deserve to win. That's not at all what I'm saying. Their defense is the best we might have ever seen in college football, or it's right up there with those Miami teams, right up there with those 2006-7 Bama teams. Like, they have incredible defenses. Like, it was really cool to see. But like, who doesn't want to see these fun, crazy matchups in the playoffs where anything can happen? What I'm saying is you're denying the fans, you're denying the crowd so much of what they want, which is just diverse college football. I'm not asking for UCF to be put in the playoffs every year because they win the Sun Belt. But what I am saying is that if UCF starts scheduling teams outside of their conference, like BYU, like maybe a Texas, like an Oregon, if they start getting big victories like that, we deserve to see those matchups in the playoffs. We deserved to see it a couple years ago when UCF crowned themselves the champions, and I truly believe that they should crown themselves the champions because they deserved and had every right to go in and play in a college football playoff game. I don't care that they would have lost. I care that they deserve that opportunity. And you've heard me complain about this several times on the podcast. But when they come out and just smack us in the face, they said, nope, no thank you. We're going to keep it to 4. Don't worry. Oh, they deserve to be in there? That's funny. Is their name Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, or Georgia? No? Well, then never mind. How else can we fondle Nick Saban's balls? Oh, okay. College football decision makers, do your job. Do your job. Give us the matchups we want to see. Give us the matchups we want to see. At least give us the opportunity to have the ability to maybe see those. And the only way you can do that is by expanding the college football playoff. That's the only way you get diverse matchups across the board. That's the only way you don't get Georgia versus Alabama, or Georgia versus Clemson, or Alabama versus Clemson, or Alabama versus Ohio State, or Clemson versus Ohio State. That's the only way you don't get all of those, right? That's the only way that you don't get the same 5 teams in the same playoffs every year because they're the best recruiters. That's awesome, and I'm glad they're the best recruiters, and I'm glad they can go out and get the best kids. But guess what? The best kids have bad days sometimes, and we can see some crazy upsets because we saw Texas A&M take down Alabama in the middle of the year. You don't think that you want to see that matchup again? Texas A&M, I think, deserve to be in the playoffs this year. So on that note, this is just my plea. College football, do everything in your power to grow a pair and give the fans 8 playoff spots. Coming close. Come here. Hey. Look at us. Look at me looking at you. Look at us right now. Do us a favor. Ask your wife or husband, it's 2022, I don't judge, for your balls back, and let's expand the college football playoffs. Can we agree? Listen, can we agree? All right, well, that's my last topic of football for a while, because football season's over, sadly. And I'm going to have to wait until August to be disappointed by the Oregon Ducks again for underachieving, and then our head coach leaving us, because that's what our head coaches seem to do. Even though we have the best facilities and then we have really cool uniforms, everybody decides that they'd rather go to Florida State than come to us. And now at the end of the day, Mario Cristobal is now a Miami Hurricane, which really pisses me off. But we have Dan Lanning, who is a not Super Bowl, but a championship winning coach, but he's never been a head coach before, and he's a defensive minded coach, and Oregon's always been known for offense. So it's going to be a long season is what I'm saying in the 2022-2023, but I'm excited, Duck Nation. I hope you're excited for college football to listen to this podcast, because I'm sure they will. I'm sure they're saying, hey, this dude with 7 listeners knows what he's talking about. And I'm sure that they're going to make the right decision and expand the college football playoffs. To end the show today, I'm going to propose a question to you. Who is the greatest GOAT of all time? Now, this question was proposed to me by one of my very good friends, Josh Hodge. And I had to kind of break it down, because if we're talking about like the greatest athletes of all time, the greatest GOATs of all time, you have Shaun White, you have Tony Hawk, you have Michael Phelps, you have Simone Biles. You could go into the Olympics realm. And so I tried to just narrow it down. So I'm going to narrow it down for you to make it easier. Who is the greatest major sport athlete of all time? What I would say major sport would be NHL, UFC, boxing, NBA, NFL, soccer, right? Now, let's just name basically tennis. Tennis is in there too. And golf. Goodness gracious. Basically the top 8 sports that you would think of when you think about sports in today's world. You know, let's keep the Olympics out of it, I guess is what I would say. But genuinely, who is the greatest GOAT of all time? You have LeBron James. You have Michael Jordan. You have Tiger Woods. You have Floyd Mayweather. You have Stipe Miocic. You have Tyson Fury. You have Khabib Nurmagomedov. I can never pronounce his last name. But you know who I'm talking. You have John Jones. John Jones has heroin. But you have John Jones. Or it's cocaine, not heroin. I got my drugs wrong. Sorry. But it's an interesting question to pose. You have Tom Brady. Who is the greatest GOAT of all time? When you think about GOATs, not the people, not the animals. I can just imagine someone clipping that little section. When you think about GOATs. But who do you think of? For me, I would probably say you have Tom Brady, you have LeBron James, you have Tiger Woods, you have Floyd Mayweather, you have John Jones, you have George St. Pierre. I'm thinking about mainly sports that you have Crosby when we're talking about hockey. I hate all of the MLB, and many of you know why, and we're going to talk about that next podcast. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting question and an interesting thing to talk about, and I would love to hear y'all's responses. DMs are always open. TLR Podcast 615. That's TLR Podcast 615 on all social media platforms. Love to interact with you on there. Just ponder that question. Thank you, Josh Hodge, for bringing it up for me. Because it's taken me a long time to really think about this, and I thought about it for a long time last night. And I was like, man, this is something I'd really like to add to the podcast this week. Who is the greatest GOAT of all time? Is it Michael Jordan? Is it Tom Brady? Is it LeBron James? Is it Floyd Mayweather? Is it Crosby? Who? take that into your week this week. Let me know what you think. Comment down below. Hit me up in my DMs, TLR Podcast 615. That's on TikTok. That's on Instagram. That's on Twitter. That's on everything. Let me know what you think, and I'm going to give you my answer next week with my co-host, Justin Courtwright, because he will be back with me. You know, Chi-Town, baby. Here we go. But this is an interesting question. Thank you, Josh Hodge, for bringing it up. Let me know who your all-time GOAT is. I'm going to tell you mine on next week's episode. All right, well, next week we will be back with Justin Courtwright in studio. I know that I've been in and out of town, but volleyball does call, so I'll be flying off to Chicago today. I'm flying off to Chicago today while I'm recording this, so it's been a busy, crazy week. A lot of Xanax, a lot of alcohol. Don't know if that can mix, but I hate flying, so wish me luck. Locker Room Faithful, I love you. I will see you next week. And once again, guys, I'm Jacob Courtwright, and this is The Locker Room.